call me.
Again.
Okay. Mr. Wolf is not with us this evening, so with that, we will just move to our agenda and call the meeting to order and ask Mr. Judd to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have before us the minutes of the October 3rd and October 10th meetings of 2017 for approval. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the minutes of October 3rd, 2017, and October the 10th, 2017 is prepared and circulated.
Moved by Mr. Chrisman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Huck and Mrs. Lindsay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, before we move to public comment, if you are looking at the agendas that were handed out tonight, or if you are at home and we're looking at the agenda that was posted on our website, you will notice that the statement that we have historically and typically made at the conclusion of the meeting relative to information that was received by the Board of Supervisors before and then could be received after the public meeting has been moved from the end of the agenda to the front of the agenda. And from now on, we will be making this announcement prior to public comment at the beginning of the agenda. And you will also notice that what we have done with that statement is to add considerable more information to it to be reflective of what the discussions are that we are having. Now, there are certain areas that we cannot discuss publicly, being personnel and legal matters. But aside from that, our goal with this new statement is going to be to provide a new level of transparency and a new level of information as to what the board is discussing prior to and following meetings. So with that, prior to this meeting, the board did receive information from the township manager, which included the scheduling of events that members of the board will be attending, and also meetings. We also discussed the status of the communications manager, and I can add to that we have in fact hired a communications manager, and she will begin her employment with Lower Paxton Township shortly after the beginning of February. So we're very excited about that, and we're looking forward to having a communications manager who can help us add even more information to the redesigned website. So that process has been completed. She has accepted our offer of employment, and we will look forward to introducing her next month. We also spent some time signing checks. The board met an executive session prior to this meeting on an employee personnel matter that could result in discipline, and that's as much as we can say about an employee personnel matter. So that is what transpired prior to this meeting, and those discussions may continue following this meeting. So in the future, you'll continue to get that information prior to public comment, which it is now time for. So are there any members of the public that would desire to make comments on an item not on the agenda this evening? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium and state your name and address. Good evening.
Greg Hare, 5902 Pine Hollow Court.
You know what, can you turn on the,
I
down
don't
at the
think the-
bottom, Mr. Hare? Do you want to show him?
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, it's on the answer. Again, Greg Hare, 5902 Pine Hollow Court. My basic comment was paying a little bit more attention, and I was watching the meeting last session on television, and I just would hope that the board would be very cautious before they begin to purchase any property. And I know that the folks are here for the Historical Society, and I was very glad to hear when the gentleman that's planning on chairing it and we're coming up with the committee, and I think that's a great idea. But as a citizen, I would prefer the township as a board of supervisors be very reluctant to become owners of property. And as I would like to see my tax dollars towards protecting me and maintaining the traffic patterns and the roads within the township. So absolutely enjoyed when I heard possibly the chairperson of the Historical Society said that they are looking for funds outside of the township. And the supervisors, I love the fact that you're going to have the space for them to meet and all that stuff, but please be very reluctant to become property owners of Historical Society. And being 62, I know we got to maintain the historical properties in the area. But, and I've only ever lived in the township since 1980, so, and I'm looking forward to see what the Historical Society comes up with. But that's all I wanted to
Okay.
make known.
Thank
is
you.
that they're
Yes.
very reluctant to become property owners.
Thank you very much. We certainly will review very closely any proposals. There are multiple ways of paying for things as well, so, but I think we're a long way away from that discussion at this point.
And we did, when we were speaking about that, I was trying to make the point as well that this can't be a township-driven initiative. The people are going to have to get involved, and it will go as far ultimately as the people and volunteers take it. We can't lift it up and carry it. We have a role. There are just simply things a volunteer organization, no matter how committed, can't do. But the township government can't carry it, and taxpayers can't carry it. It's going to require, it will go as far as the people take it, and that's why, and I'm excited because we got a great story to tell. But it will have to be ultimately, people-driven.
Well, we are very fortunate in Lower Paxton Township that when projects like this arise, and I can think to the 250th celebration in Linglestown and the clock project and the 250th celebration of the township last year, where businesses and individuals do step up, and I'm sure anything we do will be a total community effort. Our community is really good about doing those sorts of things. So it's exciting to see the process get underway. Do we have any additional public comments? Any board members like to make any comments this evening?
I
Ms.
have
Lindsay?
two. How did you know that?
Because you were pointing at me.
That's your job.
I have two. Last night, Mr. Henry, Mr. Chris, and Mr. Judd and myself attended the Council of Government meeting, and the guest speaker last night was Scott Perry, Congressman Perry. And if you could please there were two families displaced in our township on Saturday on Geraldine Drive from fire. So if you could please keep those families in your prayers, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other members have comments they would like to make at this point? Okay, very good. We will not have a manager's report. Mr. Wolf is a bit under the weather, which is not a real good place to be tonight. So we will then move on to old business. And we have a proposed resolution, number 1804, establishing a Lower Paxton Township Historical Committee. Mr. Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution 1804 is designed to do a couple of things, one of which is establish the committee itself and also give it parameters by which to move forward and develop the committee, develop a mission statement and a goals and objectives statement and provide advice to the Board of Supervisors with regard to historic preservation. The resolution is ready tonight for action. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Do any board members have any questions relative?
Just to clarify, we're just forming the Citizens Committee, Township Committee, and things will grow from there. There'll be a lot of discussions. It's exciting.
It is exciting. Any other board members have comments about the resolution?
Just a
I think it's
question.
a great idea, and I appreciate the Murphys or Joe for really initiating it. I think it adds a new dimension to the township.
I would just like to mention to the residents that in the resolution, it says that the committee shall consist of 7 members, of whom shall be residents of the township. So that's part of the resolution. I just want to let the residents know that.
Mr. Chrisman, you have it.
Well, no, I was having a sidebar in terms of the term that we're using, committee, but we do have committees, we do have commissions, we do have boards, so, and for the most part, they're synonymous terms, so I can live with committee. Otherwise, I would have suggested board, because I thought it would be more consistent with others, but since we have a variety within the township, I can live with that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought that's what we had talked about last week, that we would make it a committee.
Well, I know, but for me, there's no difference between committee, board, and commission. We use all 3 terms. We're not consistent in naming those groups within the township. We use committee, we use commission, we use board. So I didn't see any reason why it couldn't be a board, just like some of the others. But I can live with committee since we use all 3 synonymously.
Well, the key is that we have one.
That's the most important thing.
That's the most important thing. Mr. Murphy, would you or anybody else like to comment on the matter before we vote this evening?
I really don't have any direct comment, other than the fact that when somebody offers a mic to me, I have to use it. But, no, I just want to clarify the whole idea of setting up this committee. I'm also a firm believer of not using the township funds, that we have to be self-supportive. And our original plan that we offered to the Board of Supervisors last month, we stated in that we're looking to be self-supportive. It doesn't mean that in the very, very beginning, we may need a little bit of seed money to get started, but that would all come back. But anything that we run, or any event we run, or if sometime we plan to purchase a building, that would all have to come through us raising the funds. We would need help from the township if it came to, of course, going after grants and things like that. And that's why we wanted to be part of the committee. We want to be part of the township and not be by ourselves, because we're looking for your advice. We're looking to all of you to advise us. And I do appreciate all the information I've gotten from all the supervisors so far in gearing this thing up. And that's it. Any questions?
Just to thank you, Mr. Murphy, for leading this. We appreciate it.
Well, thank all of you for some of the ideas. Robin was very helpful from the very beginning, and I think I've talked to almost everybody here at one point or other about it. So I do appreciate your help.
Good, thank you. And that sort of using the township as a conduit has worked extremely well with Heroes Grove, which we've used the township as the conduit for county and state grants. And as a result, we have an incredible venue over in Brightville Park. So there are ways to do this without taxpayer dollars having been put on the table.
Yes, that's great. Now, when you're done approving this, is it possible that I can get emailed a copy of the resolution? Okay. Thank you.
Certainly. Is there any other public comment about the proposed ordinance for a historical committee? Make a motion. If we have a motion,
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve Resolution 2018-04, establishing the Lower Paxton Township Historical Committee.
it has been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Lindsay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, congratulations. We now have a historical committee in Lower Paxton. This is very exciting.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps we should make an appointment to the chairman of that committee.
I'm sure we will get to that probably in the very near future, appointing members of the committee.
Yeah, you have 5 applications, I think, already handed in.
Oh, great.
Excellent.
Great.
So we're hoping tonight people listening will send in their application.
Excellent.
Very good.
Mr.
Often-
Murphy, once you have everything, make sure that Mr. Wolf gets that so it gets on the website.
Yeah, he's getting it, so
Okay, good.
we're
Okay.
sending it to him.
Okay.
Okay, with that, we will move on to new business, and we do have resolution number 1805 authorizing the destruction of specific municipal records. Mr. Stein, in the absence of Mr. Wolf, would you like to explain to the public what we're doing here?
Sure. Yeah, this resolution, we adopt these periodically to get rid of old records that we don't need to keep anymore. And this particular one, we're going to be getting rid of documents, older documents for payroll, pay period, daily attendance logs, real estate tax duplicates, accounts payable, leave slips, Board of Supervisors agendas, applications where the people were not hired, pavilion rentals, day camp, and day passes, none of which we have to keep anymore. So if there's any questions other than that, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, it is ready for action.
Mr. Chairman, this is rather straightforward. Therefore, I'll move that we approve Resolution 2018-05, which authorizes the destruction of the specified municipal records as presented by Mr. Stein.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 1805. All in favor? A comment?
Aye.
Oh, go ahead.
These are being done at a schedule that we already have set up. It's
That's correct.
just to make that clear, these all have a schedule, amount of time they have to be kept, and so it just to make clear that it's not just kind of, what we want to get rid of and when we want to get rid of it. This is a predetermined schedule.
There are guidelines that are published
Yeah.
by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that set those up.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we vote? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Resolution 1805 is adopted. And now we have a couple of change orders. Mr. Weaver, if you would come forward and explain change order number 1.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, mini basin PC2A is a mini basin that's required as part of our second consent decree. The mini basin contract is for mainline lining with Able Recon as the contractor. And just as a little background for the board members, you may recall that PC2A, again, is required by the consent order. We have 18 mini basins to do. We typically do a total sewer replacement. This is more of a pilot project for lining to determine if lining is equivalent to typical sewer replacement. One of the reasons that we did this is because this mini basin PC2A is in the Colonial Country Club area, and a lot of the sewers go right through the country club. So it wasn't conducive anyway for the typical replacement. So we met with the engineer, came up with some specs, and we had 3 different contracts, one for mainline lining, one for manhole lining, and one for lateral lining. More specifically, in your packet, you have a memo from me to Mr. Wolf explaining the first change order on the agenda. Again, specifically, this is change order number 1. And this change order adjusts the contract time and the contract price. The adjustment increases the contract amount by a total of $2,397.63 and extends the milestone and substantial final completion dates as noted on the change order. The adjustment in the contract price reflects the contractor's proposal to use their liner material with less glass fiber reinforcement. The condition and the characteristics of the existing sanitary sewers on this project did not warrant the liner that was specified. This deduct of $13,159.35 in the contract price allowed us to have the contractor rehab an additional sewer where active infiltration was discovered, which increased the contract by $15,556.98. subtracted by the deduct of 13,159.35 comes up with the additional contract amount of $2,397.63. Essentially, just to give you a little detail on the lining material, the GHD Engineering, again, this is a pilot project, so they specified the most conservative liner, which is the toughest liner to use, this 1500. In the contract submittals, the contractor is required to have an engineer certify that the liner can structurally survive itself without the hose pipe, which is the existing sewer, regardless of what defects are there. So the engineer specified one liner, and then the contractor evaluated that liner and determined that, based on their modeling, that they can do the project with the 500 material. So they met with us, and we determined that since there's significant savings of $13,000 plus, it was our best interest to propose this to the board this evening. I'll be happy to answer any questions on change order number 1.
That's straightforward.
Do we have any questions to change order number 1?
Mr. Weaver, if I
Yeah.
read this right, we got a deduction of $13,159.35, but then an increase of the 50. So the net increase is really $23.97.
That's correct.
So I just want to make sure that,
And the other nice thing that I wanted to point out is the contractor held his unit prices for the additional line that they're going to do, and they didn't put in any profit. So we got a good deal in that regard as well.
a better result.
Yep.
Very good.
There's a map of the area that was
We're
just
ready to
posted.
make a
The
motion. Let's get
PC2
it
area would be the area where it says Colonial Golf and Tennis Club. That is the area of the project. Any other questions?
Do we have a
Straightforward.
motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve change order number 1 to the contract with Able Construction for the PC2A sanitary sewer mini basin rehab project in the amount of increase of the amount of $2,397.63 as presented by Mr. Weaver.
Mr. Chrisman has moved approval of change order number 1. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Judd. Any additional comment? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. This
All
next
right.
one's the one.
Now, change order number 1 to the contract with, how do you pronounce that? Is that a typo?
J.O.
J.O.?
Yes.
Okay. Bradley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, this is a required mini basin as part of our second consent decree, mini basin PC4A. This project on the map would be the area just off the blue area there by Brightbill Park. So this project is completed. This did not have any substantial change orders. The change order number 1 that we're presenting to you this evening is effectively 2 things. It's a final adjustment change order, which we adjust for final quantities. So the contract's bid with unit prices, and the engineer can never really determine what the quantities really are. So we adjust that at the end of the project. Additionally, as presented in my memo, again, there were 4 different other items that were not particularly described in the contract documents. The Gateway Corporate Center pump station decommissioning was in the document, but the additional sewers that needed to be replaced were not. I've also provided a map in your packet to show where those sewer lines were just adjacent to the pump station that were replaced. Essentially, when the contractor and the township inspector were out reviewing the sewer work at manhole 944, they noticed active infiltration of sewers upstream from that manhole. So they kept tracing the infiltration and discovered that it extended for 6 manhole runs. It was recommended to the engineer that while we were there that we should replace these sewers. Again, the contractor has held his unit prices for that work. The other, and that work was 56% of the change order amount. The other work was, we just described the 2A project, which was a lining project. What we do to prepare for lining is that we TV the sewers, and if there's a sewer that the contractor can't line, then it needs to be replaced. Since we had Joe Bradley working right next door, it was beneficial for us to go in and replace a portion of the line so the entire line could be lined by the other contractor. Part of this change order represents that portion, which was only 6.65%. Mismarked utilities, a number of mismarked utilities were encountered on this project. The PA One Call Act requires that the contractor be entitled to time and materials whenever they are shut down because a utility did not mark their utility correctly and the contractor hits it. In this case, this was 11% of the project, $46,000. The contractor was reasonable and the engineer agreed to their T&M for that part of the project. And lastly, Wolfensberger Park, the contractor had to mobilize equipment and push off the fill site at the township's future park, which we've been filling in to accommodate the township's future park. It also gave us a free place to dump. The contract with JVH was closed out. We didn't have anyone else to push it off. Again, we had Bradley there. They gave us a reasonable price to mobilize somebody with a dozer and go out there and push that off. And that was $16,000, give or take, and about 4% of the change order. So essentially, this change order number one, again, is a final quantity and cost adjustment worksheet. You'll see there that the original contract was $1,495,679.50. With this change order increase of $403,128.75, the final contract amount is $1,898,808.25. I'll be happy to answer any questions on change order number one for the J.O. Bradley contract.
When you have a situation where utilities were not where one call indicated they were, and we then incur costs because they get hit or you have to re-engineer, who pays ultimately for that? Are we compensated from the utility company for not knowing where their utilities are? Or do we end up eating the cost?
It's a layered answer. Unfortunately, we do not have any say in it. There's a statute under the PA One Call Act that directs us what we have to do. Mm-hmm. And in there it says that because we are the project owner, everybody that's a utility has to be a member of PA One Call. When you're a project owner, you're responsible to compensate that utility. Or the contractor. And the utility owner is not, because they can just claim that that's what our drawing said and we did it to our best of our ability. If we find there's negligence, Steve, could we file a claim against the One Call and the One Call membership?
I don't recall there being a cause of action against a utility for mismarking.
So one of the things that we're considering, and staff is kind of 50-50 on this, is one of the things that you could do is put a bid item in there, kind of an allowance for this kind of thing, so you don't have to do a change order. There's some staff members that feel that if you put that in there, then contractors are going to want to use it. So we're kind of like still flipping the coin on that one.
Yeah.
And we know we're going to have this every job, so we're considering that because we can always deny their claim for that line item. But you can have these basically on every job, so we are strongly considering putting a unit price in there.
So it's that common that the utility doesn't know where their utilities are.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it gets worse.
And it happens
When we
frequently.
get close to a utility on the drawing, it's the contractor's responsibility to use due care in protecting their facility. So even when we find it and it's marked correctly, we have to care for it. And if any reason it breaks, we're responsible. So not fun when you do construction underground.
No. Other questions?
Seems like a lot of money, Mr. Weaver, but I think you've explained every step to get up to where the amount is at.
Not only the utilities, but the additional ones that were found that needed to be done. So you had additional ones to do that weren't planned for.
That's the lion's share. Again, that's
I think that's- yes.
56% of the change order. And we had active infiltration, Swatter Township Authority. We had to advise them of that, and we pretty much had to do it.
And I understand you have to do it.
So it's safe to say that even if it hadn't occurred during this project, at some point, we would have had to do this anyhow.
Yes. And since the contractor held their unit prices and they were the low bidder, the very competitive bid, we didn't see any reason why not to use them.
Basically the same, it's a parallel.
Did we have a question?
After being left go Tyco, I spent about 18 months to 2 years with an electrical contractor. And one of the things
Can you come up to the podium and speak into the microphone? Again, give us your name so that we can hear what you're saying.
Again, Greg Hare, 5902 Pine Hollow Court. I just, a general question about the PA1 call. The last 24 months before I retired, I was working for a subcontractor. And one of the things the PA1 calls were part of our thing. And if we hit anything that wasn't marked correctly, and I don't know what the company that I worked for, what they did, but I always thought the reason for PA1 call was to protect the contractor, that there was some kind of fund that you would go back to.
Well, it's really there to protect everybody, supposedly. And so, yes, if a contractor hits a utility and it wasn't marked correctly, the contractor's not going to be liable for that. But if it means that the contractor has to stop working for a while because until they get that resolved, then the township, in this case, who is the project owner, has to pay the contractor for that time.
And I just can't believe there's no recourse, because I always, again, layperson. So I knew our company that I worked for. I knew we weren't out any money.
Correct.
Like I said, I don't know how he got recompensated, but you're saying under the township, under the work that they were doing for the township, that we're still, there's no recourse for you to
We have no recourse against the utility that did not mark them correctly.
Okay, so
I can follow up.
okay, all right.
To be more specific, when the contractor's digging, he has to do a one call, okay, before he digs. And we actually meet with all the utilities. So you have gas, you have electric, you have Verizon, you have water. So when you're going down the street, you'll see all these lines that are marked. Well, if the utility does not mark their utility, then we can go back and get them. If they mark the line, then there's nothing we can do about it, as long as they did it. Is that correct, Steve?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So that,
Is there a distinction between being this marked and not marked?
it turns out to be the same thing. The section that talks about a force account, if you will, for the contractor is that anytime a utility is mismarked, that time, we can't put anything in the contract, unit prices for that. It has to be time and material. And I asked Steve if we could.
Agreed. Totally agree.
Yeah, I asked our solicitor, well, can we circumvent that by getting the contractor to agree to some pricing? And he said that we'd be violating the statute.
The statute specifically says that you cannot do that.
And the ultimate purpose of the state law is, as I understand, is public safety. Right. You don't want to be striking a gas line or water line or anything like that. I mean, that's the ultimate, and this didn't work out properly, but I'm glad that the contractor didn't, that at least noticed the problem and didn't.
Right. There was no significant damages to any utilities in this case. So.
It could have been worse.
Yep.
Well, it would be prudent of utilities to be more cautious in how they mark.
Right.
That happened to us with the clock project. Whenever our volunteer contractors started digging the base, there was a gas line where nobody knew there was a gas line,
Yes.
which resulted in fire trucks and all sorts of other things. So that was somewhat of a shock to many of us.
Well, I guess that hits on a question that I'm reading here. Part of that was replaced at the owner's direction due to the trenchless rehab. How do those two relate?
Which number are you looking at, Mr. Hawk? Which letter?
Well, it's number 3 in description.
Number,
One sanitary sewer in PC2A mini basin was replaced at the owner's direction.
yeah, that was the sag in the pipe that we could not line it, so we had to do that. If you're looking at B under this change order, I'm not following which number you're talking about.
Number 3, just read it as you wrote it.
Oh, Miss Mark, you okay? C and okay.
In this particular case, owner is us,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Not the owner of the property, but owner
Right.
of the project.
That's
being
correct.
the Lower Paxton.
We are the owner.
Yeah.
Just to dovetail off what you were saying with these utilities, I don't want to sound like the utilities don't mark their facilities. They do. In fact, the water company, the next project that you're going to see us bid and we'll be talking about a lot is Trunk A, which is on Linglestown Road. There's a 24-inch water main that runs right in front of Sheets that services the whole township, pretty much. And the engineer was concerned about hitting it, and they didn't want to bid the job until they could locate it. We were having trouble locating it, so the water company stepped up, brought out their own people, and found the water line for us.
Oh,
Good.
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 So
Well, I
there
just
was-
wanted to clear up who the
yes,
owner was.
we are the owner of
Property
the
owner,
project.
or
Yep.
us.
But in that situation, it was nice that the water company did step up
Yes.
and did assist us in
Yeah.
that. In that
Generally
search.
speaking, there's cooperation among all the utilities to work
That's
these
good.
projects out.
Well, I'm sure particularly when you go back to older installation of utilities, records are not what they are today.
Yeah, that water line
That's-
went back to the early '60s. So
Wow.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Weaver?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
I do not like to make this motion since it's a costly one, but nonetheless. Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve change order number 1 to the contract with J.O. Bradley for the PC4A sanitary sewer mini basin rehab project in an increased amount of $403,128.75 as presented by Mr. Weaver.
So moved by Mr. Chrisman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Judd. Any additional comments? I see nobody actually really wanted to second that.
No.
Okay, in that case, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So now we have change order number 1 to the contract with Mr. Rehab.
yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is an easy one because there's no increase in contract price.
Yes.
This
one's
change
easy.
order is again for PC2A. As I identified earlier, there's actually 3 different contracts: one for mainline, one for manholes, and one for laterals. This one is for the lateral lining contract with Mr. Rehab Incorporated, and it just adjusts the contract time.
Right.
The adjustment extends the milestone and substantial and final completion dates as noted. And this adjustment was necessary to reflect a more realistic time frame for the work to be completed based on the schedule received from the contractor. So the engineer puts in a proposed or a schedule that we would like to see, and the contractor does his own schedule based on his workload and what he feels he can get done in a day. This one was even more complicated because, again, this is a pilot project. We've never done one like this. So we had 3 contractors working in one job, and they were somewhat related to one another. So we wanted to get the main line in first, and then the manholes and the laterals. So the laterals are typically last, so they needed more time. So basically, this will extend the ready for final payment date from January 12th, 2018 to May 31st, 2018. I'll be happy to answer any questions on the change order to the Mr. Rehab contract.
Just to comment, Mr. Weaver, it's nice to see that with the 3 contractors, at least they're working together, and most importantly, they're keeping you up to date on any changes, and via you as the conduit to us, that we're being kept abreast of what's going on. And I personally appreciate that, and as I'm sure the other board members will join me in that.
And I guess if this wasn't a pilot project and such a unique situation, an extension of the final completion date by almost half a year. Would that normally be atypical? Would that be significant, or these things
It would be
happen?
significant. Our engineer normally doesn't give out time extensions because they like to use that as a negotiating tool for change orders. And also our consent decree deadlines will dictate as well. In this case, we're ahead of schedule on most of these mini basins, so it didn't really affect us. And the request was reasonable because we don't want 3 contractors out there working at the same time. We're trying to get away from that as much as possible.
And that's
so
why I
we-
applaud the consensus and the
Yes.
agreement, so everyone is well aware of what's going on. And they're
Yes.
not stepping on each other's toes
Yes.
or backstabbing.
Well, they work together because they have to, but they really don't want to be quite honest.
And I understand that, but when we can give them some applause, and
Yes,
let's
right.
do that.
Yes,
Let's
indeed.
encourage that.
I agree.
Are the 3 contractors, do we normally use them?
We do. Most of the lining that we did before was when it was absolutely necessary. So all 3 of these contractors that have been used before. Well,
Okay, good.
excuse me. There's actually 2 contractors. Able Recon actually has the main line lining and the manholes. So, but we've used Able and Mr. Rehab.
Okay. I know we've used Mr. Rehab before.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be more than happy to make this motion since there's no money involved.
Well, then, please do so.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve change order number 1 to the contract with Mr. Rehab for PC 4A sanitary sewer mini basin rehab project with no increase or no decrease, just a change of dates as stipulated and presented by Mr. Weaver.
It's been moved by Mr. Chrisman. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Everybody wants to second this one because there's no change in dollars. If there are no further comments, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Mr. Weaver, thank you very much for your excellent explanation
Well-
of those 3 change orders.
Thank you, board, for your attention.
Appreciate all the work you all are doing.
Thank you.
And that takes us to letter E under new business, and that would be subdivision and land development. We do have resolution 2018-02, accepting portions of Christians Drive and Amber Fields. Would you like to take these do we have to take these one by one, or can we bundle them together?
Let's bundle them. Because
think-
they're in the same area, and it's
They're in the same area and.
Same process. I would recommend, Mr. Chairman, that we resolve both of them together in one motion.
Okay,
Autumn-
and resolution
Autumn Oaks-
1803, which is accepting.
Autumn Oaks isn't by Amber Fields, they're 2 separate.
They're 2 separate,
Yeah,
yeah.
Autumn Oaks and Amber Fields are not, they're 2
No,
separate.
but I'm saying it's simply accepting the
Right.
portions of the roads. That's why I'm saying it's the same process. That's the
Okay.
only right reason I'm suggesting. I mean, they'll have to be stated within the motion, but nonetheless, I think we can
Yes.
accept both of them.
So,
Unless council
resolution
advises
1802
differently.
is accepting portions of Christian Drive and Amber Fields. 1803 accepting portions of Silver Maple Drive and Autumn Oaks. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve resolutions 2018-02, accepting the portions of Christian Drive and Amber Fields, and resolution 2018-03, which accepts portions of Silver Maple Drive and Autumn Oaks as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. I'm assuming there are no comments or questions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And anybody opposed? Nobody's opposed. Good. Resolutions 1802 and 1803 are approved, and, okay, this just went blank. So we have improvement guarantees. There we go. Improvement guarantees. We have a number of those, which I'm thinking we can take all together in one motion as well.
Yes.
Would somebody care to make a motion to approve the improvement guarantees, development agreements and reaffirmations, et cetera?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the 7 improvement guarantees, with identifying the first 2 as new. There's an extension, there's a reduction. Hawthorne's is an extension, Charleston's a release, and the stormwater management plan for Weiss Market on Linglestown Road, which is a reduction from their letter of credit.
It has been moved that we accept the improvement guarantees. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hawk. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that brings us to payment of bills. Mrs. Lindsay.
Yes, I make a motion that we pay the bills for Lower Paxton Township and Lower Paxton Township Authority.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded that the bills be paid for Lower Paxton Township and Lower Paxton Township Authority. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And nobody opposed. And of course, we have moved our announcement to the beginning of the meeting, so that brings us to the...
I have one more announcement.
you have
I
one
forgot.
more.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. Just a reminder that next Tuesday night, January 23rd at 6 o'clock, will be the comprehensive plan with the Planning Commission, which will be held here in the Township Building, open to all residents. So we're inviting you to please come and participate. So next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock.
Which means we won't be back for 3 weeks. We have
Yeah, 1, 2,
a little,
3,
little bit of
yeah.
time here. We have 5 Tuesdays in January. Okay, that being the case, meeting adjourned.